Hi everyone, and welcome to my Campus GPS Facebook Live. This is the place where we talk about how parents can help their high school students prepare for university. And I'm Janet McDonald. I'm a former university admissions officer, and now with my Campus GPS, I help parents and high school students with the process of preparing for university. So I'm coming to you live tonight from a different floor in my home because the floor where I usually do my lives is about 800 degrees. So we're having a heat wave right now, and it's literally like I was literally melting. So anyway, I came downstairs, and so we're gonna do it here. So anyway, thanks for being here. So I started a new series called How to Find Time for Scholarships, because I keep telling everyone, you need to find time for scholarships, you need to make time for scholarships, but everybody's busy, and so that's a lot easier said than done. So I decided, well, okay, I'm going to try to help people to find that time, and we're going to try to do it in a step-by-step way. So part one tonight is the first step, and that's the process of learning how to prioritize and helping your child to learn how to prioritize their time and their activities, because many students are not very good at this. They just don't have that skill developed quite where it needs to be yet, so they need our help with that. Later on in part two, we'll talk more about kind of the how-to and that kind of practical part, but we need to start back with a little foundational work first before you get to the practical kind of hands-on how-to stuff. So to illustrate why prioritization is important and give you a good example of how it can work, I wanted to tell you a story about a student who I worked with, a grade 12 student, who was involved in a lot of activities and also played on two sports that were quite competitive. So like with a lot of these more competitive sports, she had regular practices, and there was cross-training, there were competitions, there was travel. And so between these two sports, it really ate up a lot of her time. And this student was on, kind of more rigorous academic path, and her grades weren't as high as she would have liked them to be. They just weren't as high as they should be because she didn't have a lot of time to study because of all of these activities, and mainly because of these two sports. So, but she wanted to get into a competitive program at a certain university, so she knew that something had to give. Okay, so it couldn't go on like this. Something had to give, because she wasn't going to be able to get into that program and reach her big goal, because these two, taking up all this time for these two sports was really putting that goal in jeopardy, because she wouldn't have the grades then to get into this competitive program. So, so what she did was she actually, on her own, she took a step back and she evaluated all of her extracurricular activities and found that that second sport that she was involved in, now she loved them both, but the second one she didn't love quite as much, and it just didn't give her as much pleasure, and she didn't get as much out of it as the other sport that she was involved in. So what she ended up doing is cutting that second sport. Even though she loved it, she knew that the time involved with it was jeopardizing that bigger goal that she had for herself, and so she cut it out. And what she told me was that when she did that, her grades, and I'm using a direct quote here, her grades skyrocketed. Okay, so this is the power of prioritization. So she never regretted that decision, and as far as I know, last I heard, she was on her way to that university that she wanted to attend, and all was good. So that is the power of prioritization. And so I tell you this story, with, the understanding that this student is kind of a unicorn, okay, because most students don't have that focus, and they don't have the ability to prioritize like this student did. And so if your student doesn't have the ability like this student with that focus and everything, first of all, that's normal. And secondly, they're going to need our help then with this skill of prioritization. Okay, and the problem that I see again and again with people is that, young and old, mostly with younger people, but sometimes with other people, is that they get so stuck in the day-to-day that they don't take the time that they need to reach those really big things and to think about the really big things that they want to accomplish. They just get caught up in the day-to-day. And so, we need to take that step back and learn about ways that we can reach those bigger goals. And we need to be able to do this prioritization, especially in grade 12, because there's an opportunity in grade 12 that doesn't exist in any other time really in your student's life. And that opportunity is the best time to get funding for post-secondary is in grade 12. Okay, so there will be opportunities later on when they are in university, but there will be far, far fewer opportunities, and the opportunities that are there, it will be much more competitive for those fewer opportunities. So grade 12 is the time when there are the most scholarships available for student and the least amount of competition for those. So that's why prioritization, especially in grade 12, is very important. And of course, there's the added thing that students should know how to prioritize quite well before they go to university, so that they're able to manage their time better when they're in university. So, like I said, our children need our help with this to develop this skill. So when we're talking about prioritization in general, and we talk about, before we talk about the more practical kind of how-tos of prioritization, we need to back up and think about the one really important kind of foundational piece before we get to the how-tos. And that's the why do we want to do it? So why do we want to do this thing that we want to make time for? So if you watch any of the TED Talks, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Simon Sinek and his concept of start with why. So why do you want to do this thing, and why does your child want to do this thing? So barreling through that first stage of figuring out why you want to do this thing and going straight to the kind of how-to or the practical hands-on stuff is really putting the cart before the horse. Okay, so it's the first part, that finding your why, that gives you the motivation and the discipline to then do the work later on when the work gets tough. Okay, so you need to keep that big focus or big goal in mind. So it's similar to the mindset series that I did with scholarships, the how to get into the scholarship mindset. So the scholarship mindset being that having a positive attitude and creating that positive feelings towards scholarships before you actually ask your student to sit down and to actually find them and fill out the applications, because that mindset piece, or having that positive attitude from the get-go, is really that foundational piece. And if you skip that, then your student might not want to participate to the best of their ability, or they might not want to participate at all. So this is that, foundational piece that we're talking about tonight with prioritization, is finding that why. So when we talk about why we want to find and apply for scholarship, and we think about this Simon Sinek's very famous TED Talk about how you should start with why, he says, everyone has a why. Your why is the purpose, cause, or belief that inspires you. So, and he says, knowing your why gives you a filter to make choices. And that's the key. When you know why you're doing something and you believe in it and you have a conviction about it, it helps to guide your decision making, so that when you come against those kind of tough decisions of should I choose to do this or should I choose to do that, when you know your why and you believe in it, it helps making those decisions. It makes making those decisions much easier. So because you have a clear focus, like my student did, who I talked about earlier. So once you know why you're doing something, it gives you that motivation and the discipline to make the choices to get what you really want. And so your why you want to find and apply for scholarships might be different than somebody else's, might be different than your students, who knows. But so, for example, your reason for wanting to participate in scholarships may be because you're really worried that you won't be able to fund, your students' 4 years at university. So that's a real concern and a real worry for you, and maybe your student doesn't even know to the extent that you worry about that. For your child, it might be that this is what they know that they should do, and they were told that they should do, and maybe you and or your child would like that recognition that comes with winning a scholarship and having it announced as your student walks across the stage in grade 12, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is just taking pride in a job well done. Maybe your student is trying to get into a competitive program at a university, and by winning a big scholarship at that university, it might improve their chances of getting accepted to that program. Or maybe you know enough about scholarships that you know that once you win one, it can be much easier to win more in the future because you're setting that sort of foundation for success. So you kind of have that track record of success, and that can help you to win more scholarships. So that's why I always say scholarships beget scholarships. So, or maybe it's just that you know that the grade 12 year is the best opportunity for scholarships, and you want to capitalize on that, and that's a really good move. Because if you ask anyone who has missed the scholarship bus in grade 12, they will tell you that there are not nearly as many opportunities later on, and they wish they had spent more time thinking about scholarships when they had the opportunity. So this thinking about your why is kind of related to looking at the big picture in life and sort of what you ultimately want from it, and that's how you begin to set your big priorities for life. But it really requires taking time to get yourself out of the weeds of all the day-to-day stuff that we live with. So all the daily tasks, I have to be here at this time, and I'll just do this one more thing. And that stuff that we do on autopilot every day, every week, every month, every year, until boom, it's graduation day and you didn't get to the stuff that you really wanted to get to because you're too stuck in these weeds. So I'm asking you to kind of take some time to come up for air, like up out of those weeds, get yourself up, 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 and take kind of a bird's eye view of life, and to find out, like, what is it that you would really like for to help your child to accomplish in high school, and particularly in grade 12. So, you need to take some time to get that perspective on what you really want, and that's your why. So some of these big picture goals might be, I want my child to be less worried about paying for university. Some students are pretty concerned about it. I want my child to feel more confident in their abilities. I want my child to get some recognition for the hard work that he's done over the years. Or for yourself, I want to take advantage of the opportunity to pay less for my child's university. So these are all really good kind of, big picture goals. So once you have a good think on what you think or what's important to you, now you need to ask yourself, how badly do I want to do this? Because, it's going to take time and it's going to take work. It will take working as a team, with your student. If you want to do it the most effectively, then that's the way to do it. And it will require making some tough choices, and it will require some discipline, because there will always be something that is more fun than sitting down and finding scholarships and writing applications for scholarships. But there are two things that I think that you can do as a parent that can be really helpful for your student in this regard. And the first thing is this idea of helping them to prioritize. And part of that, the second thing, is helping them to learn how to say no to things that they don't want to do or they can't do. So with prioritization, I see it all the time. Students or young people, they want to do everything. So they want to join all the teams, all the clubs. They want to join the band maybe, or some music. They want to hang out with their friends, and they want to get good grades. They want to work. They want to volunteer. They want to spend time with their boyfriend or girlfriend and all of that stuff. And that's all really normal, of course. But especially in grade 12, you can't be doing all of this stuff 24/7 and take care of some of those bigger picture things that you want to do. That those bigger picture things might be get good grades, get into the university that you want, and find and apply for scholarships. So, in case you don't know it, the brain, the adolescent brain, is not fully developed until young people are 25. I didn't realize that actually until about a year ago when I read that, but that is actually true. So the brain is still developing until a person is 25. So it can be, one of the things that's still developing is that executive function and the ability to manage time and to prioritize. So our students, our children really do need our help to do these things, because they're kind of physically unable to do it. I mean, they're able to do it up to a point for sure, and then you have your unicorns like I told you about the student in the beginning. But the majority of young people, they really don't have this skill developed yet. So it's important for us to help them to develop it, especially before they go to university, because it will be really helpful then. So one of the things that I suggest you do, and this is a really practical thing that you can do, is to get this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens by Sean Covey. So this book, you can get it through your library probably. You can borrow it through the library. Or you could probably get it in a used bookstore, or it's less than $20 on Amazon Canada. And you can read the whole book if you want, but I just want you to focus on Habit 3 or Chapter 3. And it's all about prioritization and time management for teens. So it's called Put First Things First, Will and Won't Power. So it's about saying yes to the really meaningful things and saying no to some of those things that aren't really necessary and aren't going to really move them ahead in what it is that they wanted to do, and might prevent them from getting to the place where they want to go. So this chapter is only about 20 pages long, I would say. So I would suggest that you read it and have your student read it as well. So it's short, it's just fast and easy and efficient, which I love. But it really has one of the best explanations that I've seen, and you can look on the web, and there are all kinds of articles and all of this sort of stuff, but it's actually the best kind of short and easy to understand explanation that I have seen. So yeah, it's like I say, it's less than $20 on Amazon, even if you wanted to buy it. The $20, Chapter 3 is worth $20 more than worth $20 for chapter 3 alone. The rest of the book is good, but chapter 3 is the best. So the second thing that you can do to help your child is to teach them how to say no confidently. So some young people, they find it difficult to say no to someone in a position of authority, like maybe a coach or a work supervisor or something like that, when they really can't do something or they don't want to do something. So they know, like for example, they should be studying for that test, but they've been asked to work an extra shift, or they've been asked to do something more with the coach on the team or to help out or whatever. And for one reason or another, they either can't do it or they shouldn't do it. But they sometimes find that difficult to say no when at the right time and in the right way. So they end up saying yes when they really should say no. So what you can do is to, it sounds kind of hokey, but role playing is actually the best way to do a lot of this sort of stuff. Because just thinking about it in your head is much different than when you say it. So you can try to, if they're not into it, just try to coax them into role playing that situation, and that is actually the best way to do that. So that's about, when we're talking about some of these tips in chapter 3 that he says when he talks about will and won't power, that's the won't power. That's the saying no to things that you can't do or you don't want to do or you shouldn't do because you have other commitments or time that should be spent, better spent doing something else. Okay? So, to wind down, let me just remind you, it's probably reminding you because you probably know this already, but it never hurts to hear it again. This very simple concept of when you're thinking about your time. So time is finite and we only get so much of it. We all know that. We can't add hours to the day, but we can use our time more efficiently. So this is a really simple thing that you can keep in mind. Anytime you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. So really simple concept, but it really makes sense when you think about it. When you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. So anytime you add one thing to your schedule, you're deleting the opportunity for something else in your schedule. So anytime your student says yes to, playing on that second or third team sport, something that's kind of, superfluous, that's not really going to matter, and will actually take up time that could be spent doing something else, when they say yes to that, they're saying no to working on scholarships. That's what it comes down to. And anytime they say yes to that extra shift at work, they're saying no to working on scholarships. And anytime they say yes to going to the movies with friends, they're saying no to scholarships. Now, I am absolutely, of course, not saying that your child needs to give up sports and they can't volunteer and they can't work and they can't have any fun and go out with their friends. That is not what I'm saying. Obviously, I'm the first to say that all of that stuff is important. The extracurriculars, the downtime with your friends, the getting sleep, getting a good meal, and all of that stuff. Absolutely. But if your child is saying yes, 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 yes to all of these things, there's going to be no time for those bigger goals. So you need to, what he says in the book, you need to kind of think about those big chunks first and then kind of fit the other ones in around it. So, because everyone wants a scholarship and everybody says that they're going to apply for them, but when it comes down to actually doing it, that's a different story. So you ask anyone who has had a child in grade 12 and they'll tell you, you can't do everything. Something's got to give. So you do need to learn how to prioritize. So when you and your child are deciding on activities and commitments for the upcoming year, I urge you to keep those kind of big picture things, those things that you would love to know that you had accomplished when your child walks across that stage in grade 12 and think, I got those those big things, those big goals that we were really hoping for, we really did our best to work on those. So you need to prioritize them, make them go first, and then fill in those other things around it. So, so don't get stuck in these weeds and miss this best opportunity that you'll ever have for post-secondary funding. Okay, so I leave that for you to ponder. I will not be here next Wednesday because I have something on, but I'll come back with the second part of this topic, which is more on the how-to part, some tips for the how to actually find that time in your week or in your month for scholarships. And here's a hint about that. There are 720 hours in a month, and I think for an effective scholarship plan, it only involves about 3 of those hours. So 3 hours and out of 720 hours. That's all I'm asking for. So in the meantime, grab the book, order it off Amazon or order it from the library. It's free. And have a look at chapter 3. And then check out my free information on my blog at mycampusgps.ca/blog. So thanks very much. I'll see you next time.